There we go. Can you see that all right?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. We are super excited to present API Workflows to you today. My name is Gunter Souter. I'm the Senior Director of Product Management for API Automation. And with me is Ramsay Grove. He's the Product Manager for API Automation on the team, and he will be demoing our brand new API Workflows to you. So let's dive in. Recently, we launched a survey to our customers, and what this indicates is that 75% of our customers have an API-first strategy. So it's not just a trend, it's really a shift in how our companies and our modern businesses operate, and APIs have moved beyond just technical plumbing, right? They are the front door to your systems, they're the front door to your data, to your digital and your agentic experiences. And within an agentic world, they become even more and more important. They are the connective tissue between AI, automation, and your always-on systems. They really have become how companies scale, how they move faster, and how you stay resilient in an ever-moving landscape where your applications are all over the enterprise infrastructure. So it's one thing to have an API strategy. It's another thing to really be able to execute it efficiently, with speed, with security, with scale. And that's really what we're here to show to you today and what we're here to talk about to you today. So let's talk first about what it truly takes to support an API-first strategy. Our customers are not just asking for more connectors, for more APIs to integrate and connect to. They need API integration that is fast, that is lightweight, that is scalable, and that's also deeply embedded across the UiPath platform. They need purpose-fit tooling that can handle the complexity, that can handle your real-time demands and the real-time demands of modern systems. So if you look at everything you need is, first you need obviously to be able to connect to any application, any system, any data source. Every enterprise has over hundreds of different applications that exist all across the organization. Developers really need flexibility to use pre-built connectors, to create custom connectors, to make raw API calls, to really integrate to anything and everything, ideally with the help of AI. So second, now that you've connected to everything, it really becomes a question about scale. You need to be able to be scalable, be fast, have a lightweight runtime, execute thousands of workflows, which often can be triggers to various means of different kinds of events. So we need a runtime that needs to scale instantly without you requiring to manage every piece of the infrastructure manually. So third, integration and APIs really become a security boundary. You require governance, you need deterministic logic, you need compliance. They are not just nice to have, they are truly essential to your landscape, especially within an agentic world. You need the ability to safeguard your apps, your data, and your policy. And finally, everything has become consumable in real time. Right? If you think about an agentic world where an agent needs different tools, where you have agentic orchestration that needs to interact with different applications and different complexities, you really need to be able to be consumable in real time from everywhere. So whether it's an agent, another system, your own applications, you need on-demand access to integration, system-to-system integration, and the flexibility and security to serve both internal and external consumers. So that is what we're building for, and that is what we're trying to achieve with our API workflows in the UiPath platform as a single and scalable solution. So with API workflows, we are really introducing a new way to build, run, and scale your system-to-system API integrations with real-time execution. If you're an automation developer, it provides you a whole new, fast, and intuitive way to build and test integrations. If you're a platform administrator, it gives you a zero-touch infrastructure, serverless execution, and effortless scale. And if you're a system architect, it gives you a way to abstract your business logic into reusable, callable API services across the UiPath platform and beyond. So with an API workflow, you can keep your data consistent across applications. You can build multi-step processes with validation, branching, error handling, and complex logic. And you can chain API calls together with data manipulation to really get into building composite services. And of course, you can power your agentic orchestration across your UiPath platform, consuming these directly from agents, from Maestro, from RPA workflows, and much more. So what you'll see and what you see on the right is that the design experience is clean, it's visual, it's really purpose-built for APIs and to build those system-to-system integrations with API integration and data manipulation. We're super excited for you to try this out and get your hands on these new capabilities. For us, it's not just a feature, it's really a foundation on how we see UiPath support your API-first strategy in the agentic future. So before we dive into the demo, let's talk a little bit about the key capabilities of API Workflows. So first, obviously you build. You start with a purpose-fit designer, which is built for API integrations. You can define your request payloads, you can define your responses, you can call any connector that we have available on the platform, and use raw HTTP calls where needed, or build your own custom connectors. You can also do data manipulation with JavaScript. So we provide you full access to debug to every aspect of the data with full payload visibility, generating your outputs cleanly and purpose fit to what you need or what your consuming systems need. And we also are introducing autopilot for developers for API workflows, which will help bring AI directly at your fingertips to build you even faster. Whether that is specific scripts that you want to do for data manipulation or other means, or if you want to build the entire workflow using AI, we will have those means available when we launch in late June, beginning July. So second, you'll deploy. API workflows are always serverless. They are lightweight, they're fast, they're scalable by default. There's no robots, there's no runtime setup, there's no machine targets to manage. You basically just publish and go. Everything is zero touch, which makes it easy to manage even as your workflows scale and your business requires more power to execute these workflows. And lastly, you consume these workflows. You can trigger them and execute them from anywhere across the platform. They're always event-driven. You can kick them off through any of our agents, any of our agentic orchestration, our RPA workflows, and much more that we'll expose over time. It will also provide you the ability to trigger them based on events from any application, whether that's polling or webhooks, as well as consuming them as API endpoints, so you can integrate them directly into your enterprise applications and call them as an API available on your UiPath platform. It's really intended to be a complete model, one that gives you the power to build rich API logic, to scale it instantly, and to really use and consume it from anywhere. That's really how we're looking to turn API integration as a foundation for composable and agentic automation. So with that, Ramsay, let me hand it over to you. I showed enough slides, so let's dive into the actual technology and get to the excitement of how this really works.
Yeah, happy to get started. Let me share my screen here. Okay, so what I'm going to show you is a API workflow that we have here for a workday use case. So what this workday use case is trying to accomplish is we want to pass this API workflow a first and last name, and we want to return a bunch about the org structure related to that worker. Now, if anybody's familiar with the workday APIs, they'll know that they are spread across a number of endpoints. So if you want to get worker data, you don't just call one endpoint and it gives you a big response. You probably have to call 5, 6 endpoints, depending on what you're getting, what you're trying to retrieve, in order to get the information that you want. So as I continue talking about this, let me just run this test so you can see maybe the first thing that will pop out at you when you actually look at an API workflow, which is the speed. So I hit test and it's already done. So that took about 2.5 seconds. And in this process, you can see that we've made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 API calls. We have transformed those API calls into a response, and we have a very clean output of information about this worker, Betty Lou. So what I'm going to do in this demo is I am going to build this workflow in front of you, show you how we put this together, how we are manipulating the data to get this very nice, clean response, and how we took something like a simple first name and last name input query or input parameter and turned it into this rich and catered data response here with peers, reports, managers, and all of the organizational data related to this worker here. So let me go back to Studio. I'm going to click this drop down here, and we're going to get started with an API workflow. So we come into the API workflow screen, and as Gunter talked about, API workflows can be served as an API or as a composite service even. And so the API workflow is really meant to enact what an API an API's behavior, right? And an API's behavior is a call and a response, a request and a response. And in order to make a request, sometimes you need to pass query parameters in. So we saw that we had a first name and last name. So let's go in and let's add our input parameters for this workflow, and then use that to actually just do an initial test. So I'm going to generate from the payload. I'm pretty comfortable with writing JSON. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say Betty. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to say last name Lou. And we're going to generate, I'm actually going to copy this too, and you'll see why I want to do that. We're going to generate the schema. Now we have this schema for the first name and last name. So the next thing we want to do is we want to say, okay, when we run this test for this API workflow, we want to use some test data. And so I'm just going to use the same JSON that I just created. I'm going to paste it in here and have this as my test, as my run configuration and my test configuration for this workflow. The nice thing too is since we already put in before I do this, since we already put in the request schema, it actually, when you just put quotations in here, it gives you your request schema. So it's really easy to build this out manually as well if you didn't copy and paste it in the very beginning. But since we did, I'm going to use this. And just to be sure, I'm going to run the test data, and we can see that we have input, first name Betty Lou, and we have the output, and we have the same thing. So this is just how I kind of want to run the test, make sure the API workflow is getting the input information. And it shows that if you don't set up something like a response, or if you don't have steps in there, it'll just pass whatever you pass in there right back to you as the output. But this isn't an API workflow. This is just an input output. So let's get started actually building the workflow here. So we want to add a connector, and we're going to be using this Workday REST connector throughout most of this process. So I'm going to grab this, and the very first activity that I want to grab from here is going to be a search worker by name or ID. So this is a curated activity that we have available through the Workday REST connector. And this is a good point to also bring up that the API workflows leverage our integration service connector infrastructure. So you're able to use curated activities. You're able to use all the activities that are within our connector catalog. You're able to use custom connectors if you build your own custom connector and use it within API workflows. So you have all of that infrastructure behind you to be able to build these API workflows from the ground up. Okay, so the first thing that we need to look at is how we want to search this worker. We want to use first name and last name. And so I'm going to go into this expression editor. And you're going to see this is kind of a new view on the expression editor, or your ability to input an expression within a workflow. And there's some interesting things here. We have an expression editor input screen. So if I wanted to, type my expression, I would put it over here. But then we also have this test input. And this is an extremely helpful screen over on this right-hand side, because as you run these API workflows, you're building up test data. And that test data can be used to generate these expressions. And so as you can see, we added, the run configuration of the workflow input for first name and last name, and now I have that information here. As we continue down through this workflow, you're going to see that the context here, the context is each step of the workflow. This context data is going to continue to build up, and you'll be able to continue to use this test input screen to see how you can access data within that you've run through these tests for your expression. And then finally, we have this expression output, and you'll see the usefulness of this as I work through writing this expression. But I'm not like a JavaScript professional. I can get by, I can write some basic stuff, but I'm not really great. This is probably a simple expression. I want to have the first name with a space and a last name, but we do also have autopilot down here. So I have just a prompt that I wrote out. I'm saying concatenate the workflow input first name and last name with a space in between. So we have workflow input, first name and last name, and I want to add a space in between. And autopilot can really help me generate these JavaScript expressions. And I found it to be extremely powerful because even in more complex expressions, it'll get you there, or to get you 90% there based on your prompt. And then it's easier to actually just manipulate what it gives you to get you the rest of the 10% that you might need. Now, in this case, it nailed the expression. So it added the workflow input first name with a space. It concatenated that with the last name. And in this expression output over here, you can see that we now have this Betty Lou full name right off the bat here. And that's why this expression output is so useful, because it's taking this test input, it's evaluating this expression, and it's giving you in real time the output that that expression is giving you. So your debug process is going to be very clean as you go through this. And I'll talk about more about how you referenced these test input screens, but let's move on from here, because I want to save this and then I want to test and make sure that I'm getting the data that I need. Okay, so it already executed. I didn't even need to pause talking really. And this gives me also an opportunity to explore this debug panel. So one big part of API workflows is trying to make API interactions as transparent as possible. We want you to be able to see, the request that was made, what method, what URL, what headers were passed into it, what query parameters were passed into it. We also want you to be able to see all of the response information. So we want you to be able to see the status code. If there's status text, we want you to be able to see what that is. We want you to see all the headers that the provider returned to you. And most importantly, we want you to be able to see all the content that was returned as well. So here the search workers by name or ID API call was made, and we did get a response. So we have worker type here, we have worker ID, we have person, so information about their email, ID, and phone number. We have primary job. So we have a lot of information here, right? And you can see all of the information that was returned from the provider straight through this debug panel. So if you start working on an API and you're getting responses and you don't quite know why you're getting the responses, or you're getting responses you don't expect, you can now kind of play with this more and more and instantly see how, as you manipulate the request, how the response gets manipulated. And there's no barrier between you and the API calls that are being made. Okay, so we I've seen how powerful the debug panel is here. Let's move on with the workflow. So like any good workflow, you want to have some validation. And as you can see, as we add activities here, we've separated activities into these categories. We have connectors, and that's going to be your full connector catalog. We have a straight HTTP request. We have script, which is your JavaScript. We have an if statement. So if you want to do some branching, you can do that. We have a for each, so you can loop over an array of objects. A try catch, so you can catch any of your errors and not automatically exit the workflow. And then also a response step. So in this case, I want to do a validation to make sure I got response data from my first step. So I'm going to add an if. If we go into the if, we can go into this condition. And this is where you can start seeing the test data start to be built out. So we have context, we have output, and we have the first step, which is worker one. And we just want to check that the content of this worker one actually has something. So I'm going to look into here, and actually I'm going to do a simpler thing. I have the content on my test input screen. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say copy path to clipboard. I'm going to paste it in here. And then I'm going to say dot length and say if this is equal to 0, then we want to move into a path where we respond saying we didn't get a response from this first step. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then if we go into this branch, I'm going to say if we're going to respond with a failure. And we're going to add some failure details in here. So I'm going to go into this expression. And I have already built this out, but I'm going to build this JSON array that we're going to respond to this API workflow with. And you can see how easy it is to build this array. It's basically just building a straight array right off the bat. So we have error code, we have error message, then we're going to have some error details. And you can see in the expression output how this is evaluated. So we have the error code that we put in, we have the error message, which is just the worker was not found. And then once again, we're concatenating the first name and last name because that was the input of our API workflow to say that the error details, this was the input of our workflow so that you know exactly what was for the consuming party knows exactly what they added that got this bad response. Okay, so we're going to save it and let's test this flow, but let's make sure we're testing this path. So this is where run configuration comes into handy. I'm going to say that this is actually just Betty L. And we're going to go ahead and save this. And we're going to run this test and we're going to see if this goes into our response. And it doesn't because I forgot that the search worker name ID actually does soft matching. So let me make something that will not be soft matched and test this again. Okay, perfect. So we got the response from the search workers by name or ID. And if we go into that response, we should see that the content here is empty. And see, we have 0 items in the content over here. And so we hit that if statement where we evaluated the length, it was 0, and we responded. And if we go back to the response information here, we can see that the output of the API workflow was an internal server error. It was a 500 because we sent this as a failure response. And we can see that the detail, once again, matches what we added in there, but we can see that, okay, we added the run configuration, which was not correct, and we can see it reflected in the API workflow output. Okay, so we have our error handling now, and we can good to move on here. So I'm going to go back to a valid expression here, and let's move on here. So we're now going to loop over the response that we get from this search workers by name or ID. Because remember, the content of this is an array. The response of this step is an array. So we want to be able to loop over that. So I'm going to say for each. I'm going to go into the for each, and I'm going to say from the output of workers 1, let's grab the content. And once again, let's use that as the object that we're looping over. Currently, this is empty because we just ran that erroneous test, but that's okay. We can add that, and then current item will be how we reference those items within this loop. Let's run this test. We got to the for each, so we're looking good so far. Now, the next thing we want to find is the direct reports for this worker. And the Workday connector doesn't have an activity directly for this purpose. So we're going to go into this Workday REST connector, and we're going to make a HTTP request directly to Workday from here. So a lot of our connectors will have this HTTP request activity. And it's really useful because it automatically leverages the connection that you have against that connector, and then allows you to build an API call to reach out to whatever endpoint you want that might be available for that connection and for that API. So in this case, we want to do a GET call, and we want to use a request that basically gets the direct reports. And this is the documentation from Workday. We have /workers/ID, so we need an ID of some kind, /direct reports. But we can see that our base URL doesn't quite go up to the same base URL that they would be expecting here. So we're going to add a little bit of information here. But let's go into this request URL, go into the expression, and I'm going to go ahead and paste this in. But we're going to see we have common v1, we have our own path here for our org, and workers, which is what we expect here. We have workers here. And then we're going to add the ID, so current item.id, which is just the worker ID that we have from that first step, /direct reports. And you can see that this is evaluating to an actual endpoint here in this expression output. And so we're going to go ahead and press save, and we're going to test this. And I hope, as you see, as I'm building this up, I'm adding adding activity. I'm testing. I'm adding activity. I'm testing. And what this is doing is when you go into these expressions, it's building up this test input so that you can reference these fields and get a valid expression out of it. So throughout this process of building this API workflow, you're able to continually test and evaluate each step that you're taking and making sure that it's working with with the data that you have and the data that you're building against. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to find the organization of this worker. So we're going to go into Workday REST. We are once again going to snag an HTTP request. We're doing a GET, and this time we're going to go to a different endpoint. We're going to use the supervisory organization endpoint. I can show you the documentation for it, and you can see how we're matching it in this HTTP request. So we have supervisory organization /ID. So I'm going to go into the request URL. I'm going to snag this expression. I'm going to put it in here, and you see we have supervisory organization with this prefix of a path here. And then we're grabbing the current item, primary job. So basically the worker's primary job, supervisory organization.id. And if we look in here, we can actually find this path here. So let's see, we have current item, we have primary job, here's primary job. We scroll down, we'll find supervisor or organization, and then we have the ID right here. So if I really wanted to, I could actually just right click this if I found it on this side and just say, paste this, let's paste this in, and it'll do the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to go back because I'm using current item here and press save. And once again, let's test this. Okay, good. So we continue to get responses here. So we have content for the supervisory organization, including some manager information. We have additional information on the direct reports, and let's actually name this so we know exactly what we're doing. So get direct reports, get organization. And this makes it much cleaner for when we're actually trying to read about what we're doing here. Okay, finally, we are going to be getting the manager information. So you saw that the get organization had some manager information, but we need more information than the endpoint actually returns. So I'm going to come in here, and instead of using the HTTP request, I'm going to use a get record since we do have the manager's ID from that previous call. And we're going to say, name this get manager. And let's use this get record. So this is a CRUD activity from that workday connector. We're going to say workers, and all we need is an ID here. So what we need to do is we need to grab from the previous step the ID for their manager. And if we go down through here, we should be able to find that we have a second HTTP request. And in here, we will be able to see that we have a manager ID right here. So I'm just going to grab this and put this in here. Good, we have a manager ID. I'm going to press save, and once again, we're going to hit this test button. And once again, we're successful. Make sure we get the information that we want here. Yeah, good. We're looking good. So the person, we have a name and an email. And that's really, if you remember when I was showing the example workflow at the beginning, what we're trying to get is all the name and email for all of this information. And I'll get more into why it's so important to be able to kind of curate the response from API workflows, but it fits into the agentic workspace. And just using AI and be able to really add security, as Gunter was talking about, to your APIs that you're using and how people can use and leverage that information. Okay, so the last API call we want to make is we want to get peers. So once again, we're going to go into the HTTP request. We're going to do another get call, and we're going to grab another endpoint here, and I'll put it up on screen like I have with the rest of them. We want to do the supervisor organization /ID/workers. So we're saying, what are all of the workers under this specific person's ID? So we'll go back in here. We will look at this request URL, and I'm going to paste this in here, and you'll see that we're using that supervisor organization /ID. So the ID we're grabbing is that supervisor organization and /workers. I'm going to go ahead and press save, and we will run this one more time. It was successful again. Thank you. And we're going to name that get peers. And now we're going to come to an interesting point. So we've gathered a lot of information, right? We have the worker information, we have direct reports of that worker, we have the organization for that worker, we have their manager, and we have all the peers that are related to that initial worker. But all of that data is in separate steps. We haven't combined this into something that is a single object that is easy to see and view and read. It's a lot of separate information. So let's look at how we can take all this information and combine it into a single object as we need it. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to look at all the activities, and I'm going to say, we're going to grab a script activity, which is JavaScript. I'm going to rename this, say combine worker information. And we're going to go into here and add an expression. Now, I'm going to add an expression here. It's a bigger expression, so I'm not going to make you sit here and watch me try to write out the whole thing. But I think it does show you something that is very powerful about using JavaScript in particular. So we're going through and we're building up this data. So we have worker data, and we're grabbing the current item. Remember, we're within a loop on this step. So we're grabbing the current item descriptor and the email, and the current item descriptor is the person's name. And so we can see that output right here. From the manager step, we have the ability to grab the manager information so that we have the name and the email here. And then we have all the peers and all the direct reports. And if you remember how we got peers, we got the supervisory organization, and then we grabbed all the workers within that supervisory organization, which would include our initial worker, right? But we want to actually exclude that. So using JavaScript, you can very easily loop through all of the information using the map parameter, and then map the name and the worker email. But then you can add a dot filter, and you can filter out the name of the original worker that we're doing here. So all of this is looping through the information of all the peers and then filtering out the initial worker ID in 4 lines of code. So very, very easy to do this, very, very powerful. And this is something where Autopilot, I would ask Autopilot to help me too. Like, hey, here's the outline of the object I'm trying to create. Take the last 4 API steps and combine them into this output. We're doing a very similar thing for the direct reports as well. So we're looping through all of the direct reports that we found that were listed, grabbing the name and ID, and you can see under reports that we're seeing this very nicely. Let me expand this a little bit. Nicely filtered list of name and email for all the direct reports of this initial worker. So if I get this as big as it can go, you can see that we have worker, we have manager, peers, reports, and we just have the name and email of each one. Okay, so let me press save here, and we're getting to the end. The last step of any API workflow should always be a response. So remember when I talked about the fact that we are creating a request, or the API workflow is really kind of modeling an API. So there's a request and there's a response. We have the request in the run configuration, we have the request in the input in the data manager in the input schema, but we also need to work on a response here. So the very last step, we're going to grab a response. Last time we did a response, we did a failure. This time I'm going to do a successful response. And I want the response to look like this. So I want to say worker details. And then all I want to do is I want to grab the output of the for each and have that here. So I'm going to say context.outputs.forEach. And then you can see in the expression output already, we have quite a few results here, but I don't want all of these results. I really just want the information that we put together, right? So let's say results, and what I want from here is actually content.data, correct? Let's see. Oh, I know why this isn't working. Isn't giving me the right results, and it's because I forgot to hit test. We didn't actually consolidate all that information by using the JavaScript in order to get this response data correct. So here's a learning point. If you start using API workflows, remember to test with each step. Otherwise, you might not have the test data you need to make the expression actually evaluate the way that you want it to. So let's try this one more time. Worker details, and then let's go into context dot outputs dot for each dot results. Okay, and that looks way better. So this is now going to be the response that we're going to be getting from this API workflow. And as you can see, it's exactly what we had created that object for, except that object that we had created is now an array, because a for each will take the last step within the for each and consolidate and append all of those into an array that you can then access after that for each has run through all of the objects within it. In this case, we only have one object for that for each, which is why you're just seeing this one object here. So let's press save, let's hit test and make sure that we're getting the output we want. Excellent, we are. We see the same output that we saw when I showed you the completed workflow before we started building this. So we're happy with this. All of these should have the information we want. Let's double check it. Name, email, name, email, name, email, name, email. We're good. So the last step we want to do is we want to set the output schema of this API workflow. So I'm going to copy this object, and next to any of these objects or properties, you have this icon here. And this allows you to copy it straight to the clipboard. I'm going to go to the output. I'm going to say generate from payload, and I'm just going to copy this payload into here. You see we have the same payload as we had, and we're going to say generate schema. And you can see that it generates this nice schema for us. And we have now built this API workflow. So from start to finish, we just built the workflow that I showed you at the beginning. And we're really catering the response here to the agentic landscape. So a big part of agents is you don't want to be feeding agents PII information. You want to be really cater the responses of API workflows or just anything that you're giving to an agent to the information that it really needs. You don't want to flood an agent with extra information. You also don't want to give it bad information or private information. So API workflows really allow you to very easily cater a number of API calls into a very clean response that will not give the agent information it shouldn't have and won't actually confuse an agent. And to show you a little bit about how agents can actually interact with API workflows, let's actually open an agent and give this workflow a try here. So I'm going to go into this agent, and I've set up this agent to use this API workflow as a tool. It says a tool to retrieve the name and email address for workers manager, peers, and direct reports. And I'm going to add in here kind of an interesting prompt. So I'm going to remove this last part, but I'm going to say, give me Betty Lou, which remember that was my run configurations. That was my test case, but give me her manager's manager. And so we don't have that information just from the first tool call. And so what we're expecting the agent to do is to be able to go into this, use this tool, get the response, evaluate the response of that, and pull out Betty Lou's manager from that response, and make another LLM call, another tool call in order to get the information about that manager as well. And so as we're looking through this debug process, we're seeing that we made an LLM call, we executed a tool call to get the initial response for Betty Lou. And as you can see, the agent actually was able to make the jump that, hey, I need to make another call in order to get her manager. And we got another tool call. And the response here is that we successfully retrieved the manager's manager for Betty Lou. The manager's manager is Mark Navarro, and their email is mnavarro@workday.net. So I think this is a great example of just how powerful API workflows can be when you use them in an agentic workspace, because agents can take what you've built and automatically deduce how to use it as a tool to really provide powerful information and powerful responses for your use cases and for your users that are using it. Okay, that was a lot of talking. I hope you found this very, very useful. And I see that there was a lot of questions. I was focusing on doing the demo, but I see there was a lot of questions, so I'll jump in there and see if anything is left unanswered. But in the meantime, I will pass this back to Gunter to finish this up.
Awesome. Thank you, Ramsay. That was a great demo. Let me share my screen. And most of the questions I think are answered, but if you find some that are not, or you want to chime in, absolutely do so.
Will do.
All right. So what you just saw in the demo that Ramsay gave was really a whole new way of build API integration with UiPath, right? So the really cool stuff, and it amazes me every time when you build this, Ramsay. I've seen this a few times, but it's fast. You can start instantly. You really dive in, and within less than 20 minutes, really explaining every single detail of what you're doing. We got a working API workflow that you use end-to-end in an agent and trigger all the way down to getting a working scenario, which is amazing. So if you take a few things back from why you would use API workflows. So first of all, you can start instantly, right? You saw how Ramsay dove in, he leveraged APIs, JavaScript. It's really a no friction environment. And there's a very low learning curve. There's no proprietary syntax. Everything is just available. You're calling APIs, you're using JavaScript, you're stringing things together. This also allows you to integrate more. right? If you can build this in 20 minutes, then imagine what you can do if you have a lot of time and you want to build many different integrations, system to system, plug them into all the different tooling that you have available. It really allows you to do more. One of the things we didn't touch on today has really been autopilot. We will touch on that in future sessions for sure. But the idea as well is that you will be able to build this with autopilot. We actually recently showed a demo at our DevCon conference where we built the entire workflow with an autopilot experience. Today, we wanted to show you from scratch how you would do it if you don't use these toolings available and want to do everything yourself. So it also allows you to be agentic ready. Ramsay talked a little bit about securing your data, making sure that you can safeguard what is exposed to agents. It allows you to make sure that there is a clear point of integration with your enterprise applications, with your critical data, that you can then use all the way across UiPath and beyond. So it really allows you to interact with the systems, secure your data, make sure that you only expose the data that other systems need, and channel all of that through these API workflows. So that brings us also to the enterprise control, right? It's not just about the workflow itself, it's also about the entire UiPath platform. You have governance, you have policy involvement, you have role-based access control. All the things that you know and love of UiPath are available and feed into the API workflow framework. So it also allows you to run when it matters. Whenever something needs an API workflow as a tool, as a task, as an instant thing to be executed, API workflows are always available. They don't need to wait to start up, or they don't need to be distributed to an available execution engine. They're always there. They can always execute. They execute in parallel, and they can respond to any event. So it really allows you to scale in real time. And if your business has periods of time where they need additional processing power, API workflows are there to take up that load and to execute at scale. It also allows you to consume from anywhere. In the demo, you saw it being consumed from an agent, but you can also consume it from Maestro. You can also consume it from RPA workflows. We are looking at ways to plug API workflows in everywhere across the UiPath platform for extensibility, which we'll talk about soon in the future as well. But it really becomes a callable service that you can call anywhere across UiPath. And later this year, we'll also make sure that it can become available anywhere to your enterprise applications. So you can plug it in as an API within your own framework, within your own tools, and within your own applications. So this is really how we take integration from something that's mainly static into something that is dynamic, agentic, enterprise ready, and make it reusable, make it available for real-time execution anywhere where you need it. So let's also compare this a little bit to what you already know, right? Because the question we often get is, how does this compare between our RPA workflows with our robots and our API workflows? So in the end, they are not competitors, right? They are truly complementary. They offer approaches, each to build what it does best. So on the RPA workflow side, if you're looking for human-centric automation, using UI and combining it with API integration as well, workflows that mimic how humans interact with these systems. If you want to automate beyond real time with things like non-time sensitive operations, long-running processes, desktop automations, and if you want to make sure that you have very close control about where these things run, and with the managed robot executions, RPA workflows are the way to go. If you're truly looking for system-to-system integration, connect applications together, connect data between applications together, making sure that you can chain APIs together with dynamic data structures and respond to real-time and event-driven executions without needing to manage a runtime, and that is absolutely critical, then API workflows are the way to go. Right? So if you look at the bottom line, automating human interactions with AUI and API, go with RPA workflows. If you're looking to integrate your critical business applications with APIs, API workflows are the right answer. If you combine both together, because one can call the other, you really get into an unmatched powerful flexibility that allows you to automate everything and anything at the speed that you need it and combine the best of both worlds. So to close out on this, API workflows are really built into the core of UiPath. It's not a bolt-on, it's a purpose-fit design, a runtime experience for API integration, for data manipulation. It's built for speed, control, flexibility, modern automation demands, and really powers your agentic automation offering. It's lightweight, it's fast, it's scalable. You saw today how Ramsay rapidly built API logic with precision, flexibility, visibility into the payloads, deployed to the zero-touch runtime and immediately run it from anywhere across the platform. Those are the things I would want you to remember. It's not about replacing RPA, it's about using the best tool for the right job, combine the power of the full platform together. And as I said earlier to you, we are weeks away from public preview. We're hoping to launch that late June, early July, with GA following very soon by the end of July. So we can't wait for you to get your hands on that. API workflows are the foundation of what is next. They're a big part of the agentic future of UiPath, and we are so excited to see what you're going to build with it. So let's move on to any questions we have from the team.
Feel free to unmute at this point if you'd like to ask a question live, or if anything you felt remained unanswered in the chat. The chat was pretty busy, so okay. Thank you, Camila, for the feedback. But let's see if you'd like to ask a question first. See, we have questions about the recording. Yes, the recording will be shared tomorrow with everyone by email, and you will also be able to find it on the event link. So please raise your hands if you want to speak up. Doesn't necessarily have to be a question, it can also be feedback. See, we'll also have some MVPs in the chat. I see Tracy's with us.
Yeah, I'm happy to ask my question. This is Tracy Dixon.
Hey, Tracy.
Can you talk about the impact that this work might be having on tools like the ability to import an API into a library and make activities with it?
Yeah, and in the end, everything you do with an API workflow basically becomes usable in the other tooling as an activity. Right? What you're doing is you define a payload as input and as outputs, which in the end is a similar experience as what you would do with any kind of activity. There's still some work to do on our end, Tracy, on really tying that together with, I think you're referring to libraries as well, and making that available across the platform. But it will definitely be a possibility because everything we do becomes just an input output that can be consumed across the platform. So we want to make sure that becomes reusable and that you can easily consume that wherever you need it. So we'll definitely dive in more and take some of that feedback as well to get to a more fine-tuned workings around how you would do that and use that in the library approach.
That's exciting. I know that's to me, that's one of the features that not a lot of people know exist. That is like one of the best things that exists, that ability to import an API definition, regardless of what it is, and to go make quick activities from it. So that's pretty exciting, as long as you can get it to import. I'm so happy to hear that you guys are working.
Yeah, one of the things we actually didn't touch on in the demo today, but we're still working on this, but one of the features we're looking to release with API Workflows as well is the ability to import curls directly into your HTTP activities. Because that's another request we've gotten often is I don't want to go define my API from scratch and go copy paste things back and forth in each of the individual fields. I have a curl, I know how to call this API, I just want to get my activities configured. So that will be available as well as I mentioned earlier to you, Autopilot will be able to configure these activities practically automatically as well. There's still some work to do there. We got some really good results and really good accuracy in our first testing, but we want to make all of this as easy as possible for you with the least amount of work.
Love it.
Thank you, Tracy. Baluna, would you like to unmute?
Hey, hi, Christina. Thanks for this platform. And before my question, I just appreciate everyone, guys. It was a good demo and it was nice to be part of this process. So my question is that, can you please repeat when it will be available for the test and, for the hands-on. And I see there is a question also put up in the chat. Will it be available in the desktop version, desktop studio, or is it only available for Studio Web? I mean, yeah, that part.
Great questions, Varuna. Great question. Let me tackle the last one first. So API workflows will only be available in Studio Web at this point in time. That's one important aspect. That doesn't mean you can't use them from Studio Desktop, but if you want to consume these from an RPA workflow that you develop in Studio Desktop, you'll be able to consume these API workflows. But to develop API workflows, we will start with the Studio Web design interface as part of our unified build experience. As to availability, we are today in private preview. So if we have any enterprise customers that want to get a sneak peek, want to participate and provide feedback early on, I invite anybody to sign up through our insider portal and join our private preview. We still have some spots left to collaborate with you and get the feedback. We want to know what you want to build. And we are looking to launch in public preview late June, beginning July, meaning it will be available to all of our community users as well. And we are targeting a GA by the end of July, pretty soon after. So we are moving very fast, and we really want all of you to get your hands on this because we're super excited for this ourselves.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Varuna. Let's see if we have any other questions. We can still take one or two. I think we have 5 more minutes to go. So if you feel there's some curiosity or something that was not detailed enough, maybe now it's the time. Everyone is all set. No further question. I see Piotr is also here with us, another UiPath MVP. Piotr, would you like to comment a bit on what you saw today? If you're able to unmute. Maybe not. Anyway, till then, and if you decide whether you have any more questions, I can ask Gunter if he's so nice as to move the slide so you can see the next dev dive session. And my colleague Mihai will share the links in the chat. So we are, of course, waiting for you to join us next month in June for the next dev dive session. So you can see here the date, the topic, accelerating agentic automation with autopilot for everyone. So we go back to agentic, exciting for everyone. And we will soon publish the July session as well next week. And you will receive also notification on that. So speed up, save your seat for the June session. And let us know if you're looking forward to any other sessions, any other topics you would like to see on dev dives. You can let us know by email, or you can just drop in the chat what you'd like to see in the next sessions. We thank you a lot for joining us today. Also, of course, we are very grateful to Gunter and to Ramsay for demoing and presenting to us today, and for my colleague Mihai for setting up this session. Thank you, guys. I will let you say goodbye to our audience.
Thank you all. Really appreciate everyone joining. Great feedback. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Ramsay and I. We'll be happy to talk more about this. This is our life.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, thank you all. See you next month.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.